Hi everyone and welcome to the video. I've been pondering for a while on the best way to use my social media to help improve your guys' games. And I believe a good place to start would be with how we reflect on our games and then how we implement those changes based on our reflection. With stat-based systems such as Decade and Arcos, stat tracking has never been easier for more casual golfers. And if you're serious about improving your games, these are two systems I would invest in. And I believe this more holistic part of golf is becoming more accepted by regular golfers, and it's no longer something that's just reserved for those elite level golfers. But if you are just starting down this path and you don't really want to make the financial commitment as of yet, I'm going to do some videos over this winter period reflecting on my game, and hopefully that will provide some good starting points for yourselves. So without further ado, let's get into my first round of the winter series, and it was at Sherborne Golf Club. As you can see on your screen now, I've put up my Tiger 5 results. For those unfamiliar with the Tiger 5, these are 5 scoring metrics that Big Cat used to measure his rounds. Most of these metrics should be recognisable, such as doubles, free putts, bogeys on par 5s. However, the bogeys with scoring clubs for Tiger was from 120 yards and in. And within that, you also like to track how many greens he was missing from inside 120 yards. And then there's easy up and downs as well. So that's not those short-sided high lob shots over bunkers. It's the up the green 20-yard chips. It's those bumping arounds that are around the green and on towards the pin. But I know some of you are probably thinking, well, I'm not Tiger. Tracking these stats isn't any good for me. These stats can be adjusted depending on your level, right? So if you're a 36 handicapper, instead of looking at gross doubles, let's look at net doubles. Instead of, if you're a scratch golfer, that's those bogeys with scoring clubs from 120 and in, it's going to be a more important stat for you. I think, the two stats for everyone that is applicable, no matter if you're a 54 or a scratch golfer, is the simple up and downs and keeping free putts off the cards. If you can minimise those simple mistakes, your scoring average will plummet, right? If you're a scratch golfer that averages a 3 putt around, imagine how much better you'll be in 12 months if you're turning that 3 putt into a 2 putt. So there's definitely a lot of traction within these 5 basic stats to improve your game. So what I'm going to do is quickly look at my Tiger 5 and where I need to improve from Sherborne as I go into the next event. So as you can see at the top there, doubles is what's killed the card. 3 doubles is never going to help anyone and anyone's scoring. So I also knew that there was going to be a rough time out there. I've probably played 6-7 competitive rounds if you're lucky this year. And with that, rust and bad judgments and bad decisions come. And then the 2 bogeys on par 5s is basically just 1 double. I've just put them together because I think that's fitting. I've still dropped 2 shots there. I did have a 3 putt and I didn't get an easy up and down, which again cost me 2 more shots. So if you was to put that together and eliminate the 3 doubles, get the easy up and down and take the 3 putt off, what's a bad round all of a sudden become a very good round. What we need to do now is work out how I'm going to basically reduce that gap, which is why we're going to now look at something a little bit more detailed in the stats table. The stat table in front of you guys now is a pretty basic one, but let's start with fairways in the left-hand column. I will mention that this wasn't every shot I hit in the fairway. If it was in the first cut, by the straight line at the pin, there was nothing impeding me, etc. I counted it as it's not really massively affecting my strokes gained. More the club you use off the tee and your distance off the tee will affect that greater. So the front line actually proved pretty fruitful for me. I hit every fairway, or had a clear line into every green. And then I hit 7 out of 9 greens, which is something I'm really happy with on reflection. The first hole, I think I just got a little bit excited, or maybe took the wind a little bit too literal, and just flew the green. And then on I think it's the 7th, the par 3, it's 190 yards back into wind, back pin. I think I just wussed out a little bit. But I was still up there by the green, just didn't make the up and down. And then in between the fairways and greens column is distance to the hole. That was my distance to the hole after the first tee shot on par 4s and par 5s, basically. And then I've also got my approach yardage. That would be my first shot into the green. So whether it was par threes or par fours or par fives, it's either going to be the first or second shot in. So over the front nine, I averaged about 140 yards on approach, and then within that about 11 feet to the pin, which showed how well I was actually hitting the ball on the front side, especially as it was windy. So I was really happy, to be fair, walking off for the ninth with the way I was hitting it. And then I also averaged 1.6 putts roughly per greens hit, which is why I was 2 under through 9. I hold a great putt on the stroke one up around the corner, and then I made a couple of really nice birdies elsewhere. But I did par both the fives on the front side, which is why I've got a 1 next to that easy up and down. On the 6th, I was greenside and 2, and didn't get the simple up and down. And then on the 8th, I was a bit further away, but still, it was a tough chip, but still one that I could have done better, I think. But it wasn't quite a simple up and down. So walking from the 9th to the 10th, I was quite happy, and I think I just switched off a little bit at that point. So on the 10th, I hit a bad tee shot, and that is where the back nine sort of started to capitulate. So I hit 5 out of 8 fairways on the back, and obviously the 3 times I missed the fairway, I didn't have a clear line into the green. So we'll go about why that impacted my rounds a bit more later on, as bad tee shots tend to lead to big numbers. So apart from that, on the back nine, I had about 97 yards into the green, which is due to 2 reasons. I kept hitting driver off a tee, and the back nine shorter than the front nine. So obviously you're going to be a lot closer to the green. The 4 greens I did hit on the back nine, I managed to get it to about 8 feet. Again, because I was being aggressive off the tee, so I didn't have that far into the greens on those 4 holes. But I didn't hole any putts. I averaged 2 putts per green on the back nine, excluding the par 5 11. So let's talk a little bit more about what led to those big numbers, and let's do that using Google Earth. So starting with 10, I will also admit I haven't played show ball in a little while, and I think that may have hindered me a little bit, as I didn't really do too much prep beforehand in terms of working out where everything was. So on 10, I was aiming at those left-hand trees there you can see by that line, and I ended up literally where that line finishes, just to the left-hand side of those trees there. And I will say that, I was aiming at those trees, and I hit it all right, to be fair. I think the wind just blew it, and I just got caught up behind it. In hindsight, trying to hit driver into a 34-yard gap is probably not the smartest play in the world, especially when I looked over my shoulder and 2 of my playing partners were in the fatter part of the fairway, which you'll probably see now. I know I'm exaggerating, but there's 77 yards of room there to hit it in. I could literally snap hook it 60 yards and I would still have a better line into the pin than what I did. So they also had about 100 yards in, which really isn't that end of the world no matter what. So yeah, in hindsight, I think 3 wood was probably the play on that hole. Get it into that fat part of the fairway, and then save yourself having to chip out like I did. And then when I initially sat down, I think, and thought about this, I think that I was a little bit rattled, and I had to chip out, and then felt like I was chasing a little bit, which probably led to me making the silly double that I did, because I got a little bit distracted. So instead of bouncing the back like the Great Tiger does very well, I decided to compound the error and carry on. So that brings us to the 11th, which is the middle hole as you're looking at it now. The right one is the first hole, and the left one's the 10th hole we've just played. So the wind was coming off the left, and my initial thought when I stood on the tee was, let's get 1 back here. This is quite a short 5. I've sort of, I don't know, maybe a little, I definitely was thinking more about the future than the present. So I ended up by those trees where the line ends over there on the right-hand side of the first hole. And I don't think driver was the worst play in the world, but I think sometimes when you come off a double, just getting the ball under control, back in the fairway, especially it is a short par 5, is never the worst thing in the world. I think the fairway was 50 yards wide. And if I hit that 3 wood like I did my driver, I'm I'm nowhere near as in a bad position as what I was. So from that right-hand side to first, I decided to just try and get it back over the trees in play and just hit a 7-iron over. And sadly, it was too much club, which led to me having a nice 80 yarder from the fairway bunker. So not being very present and I think a little bit more worried about my score, I decided to go for it. You know, to be in my credit, I hit it really nicely, picked it lovely off the fairway bunker, landed 6 foot past the back pin, one bounce, hit the downslope behind the green and OB. So that's why I didn't finish out that hole, as it was better ball and my partner was playing well. I thought, let him have it. I don't need the stress. So hopefully at this point you're starting to see a little bit of a trend in those 2 holes and what I've done wrong. But let's go through 13 before we reflect properly on those points. So on your screen now is the 13th, and that yellow line there is marking out at 236, just about covers the trees on the left-hand side, which I zapped. So I did learn a little bit from the 10th and made sure that I wasn't taking too much club or too little club. But I decided to hit driver. I figured that I could carry the 236, and I think the bunker was 250 at the max. Even though it was uphill, cold, and a little bit into wind, I figured a decent driver, I'd clear that easily. Unfortunately, I did not hit a decent driver. I hit straight on that line there, and it finished up against a large tree trunk. So we won't talk about the capitulation from there to the green, but I've played this hole, I don't know, 100 times, and trying to hit driver into that 26-yard gap that you can see on your screen probably wasn't the best idea in the world. You know, out of the 4 of us, we all hit driver, and only one of us actually managed to find the fairway. So yeah, it definitely wasn't driver by any stretch of imagination on that hole. And like I say, I played this hole countless times over the years, and I've always laid back into sort of this gap you can see here, about 180, 190. It is uphill, so I usually end up hitting like a 3-iron or something off this tee. But it's also the widest part of the hole, so it gives you a good 37 yards, give or take, to hit your 3-iron into, which you should be doing 99 times out of 100. So yeah, just summarises up, I think, the trend that we're seeing. You know, it's between 10 and 13 is definitely the wrong club off the tee, isn't it? So let's wrap this all together and maybe think a little bit about what we're going to do heading towards Knighton. So let's bring all this together, and what do we take away from this? You know, the 10th hole was a bad decision. You know, I didn't put a bad swing on my driver. I think it was just that line with 3 wood, and you know, I've got a nice clean look again at the green. And then once I got out of position, I think I panicked, and that led to me compounding errors and making a double. And I think I then, instead of taking a step back and the breath back, which I think is something you do when you play a lot of golf, you tend to make yourself a lot more present. I started craving getting back to where I was, and that led to me sort of hitting that bad tee shot on 11, and it was a bad tee shot. You know, I don't think driver's the worst play in the world, but like I said, if you've just made a double, sometimes getting the ball in the fairway, getting the ball in position, especially on a short par 5, like I think if I hit 3 wood off a tee, I probably could have got there like a 3-iron, maybe a 2-iron. But it's starting to show a trend here that it's compounding mental errors, and so far only really one bad swing off the tee. You know, and I did putt poorly on 10, but again, I think I was just trying to make the putt, just trying, and I missed a tap in because I was pretty fed up with myself by that point. And then moving through to 13, you know, I haven't played share ball in a long time, but I know that every time I've played it, I've laid it back up into the fairway and just wedged it up to the green. I think I got a little bit wrapped up in the moment there. But, you know, until you sit down and you go through this process, you know, and the process started with the Tiger 5 at the start of the video. You know, what have I done wrong? I've had 3 doubles, you know, I've not played the par 5 as well. And you can break it down, you know, And then you move into the next step, which is just simple stat tracking. You know, it's just measuring how far you've got to the hole with your second after you approach shot, how far you've got in after your tee shot, how many fairways, in quotations, you've hit, how many greens and reg you've hit, how many putts you've had, how many putts per greens have you had. Because fairways and putts as a collective aren't the most useful stats. You can be more specific to improve quicker. But hopefully you're starting to see a trend here that it was course management, and then that poor course management led to the mental doubt and the craving, which then led to bad swings and bad decisions and bad putts. Whereas on the front nine, when the ball was in play and I was in control and a bit more in the flow, the scoring was a lot better. But I think if you come in from your Saturday medal, and, I do this all the time. I say, oh, how was it? Oh, played terrible. Chuck the card in the box, go have your pint, and then next week, oh, terrible, chuck the card. You're not sitting down, you can do this in the car after you've had your pint. What really went wrong today? Put your Tiger 5 down. All right, well, if I go out and play on Wednesday, let's try and get that down to... And then when you are playing well, you should also keep these stats. So then when you are playing bad, you've always got something to work back to. So hopefully this will give you enough of a reflection from the very start of the video to the present. The next one for me is at Knighton at the start of next month, which is a very different challenge to Sherborne, but the intentions will stay the same. We'll try and zero out the Tiger 5. If anyone wants to talk a bit more about this, you're more than welcome to give me a message, and I don't mind, giving you some guidance. I'm definitely not an expert, but these are just my honest reflections. And until next time, good luck, guys, and play well.